MK Sews, I'm Emma. Today I want to talk to you about a top that I refashioned from a thrifted dress back in March. When I was creating this top, I took a lot of progress photos and I thought I would go through that process with you today so that you can see how I went about deciding how to change that dress from being unwearable into a top that I really love to wear. Let's have a look at how this dress fit me straight from the op shop or thrift shop for those who aren't in Australia. So from this you can see that the dress is quite tight across the stomach. It's also tight under the arms. It's tight across the bust. And personally I think it is generally quite unflattering being so tight like that. Some people wouldn't be bothered by it, but it made me uncomfortable to wear it this way. So I wanted to turn it into something that fit better than this and something that I would want to wear more often. I'm going to have the pictures on my iPad, which is just down here. So if I glance down while I'm talking you through the process, that's why. So I began by unpicking both side seams. To increase the width of the dress and not make it so tight across the bust and under the arms and across the tummy, I knew I was going to need to add in some different fabric. So I found an old t-shirt and I used this t-shirt to add in the extra fabric that I would need. I cut up the side seams of that t-shirt and I found that the back panel was the best to use for this project, and I've kept the rest of that t-shirt for some time in the future. Once I had the back panel of the t-shirt laid out, I drew on some triangles. I knew that I needed to use the full length of the t-shirt to be able to make the final product as long as I wanted the final top to be. You can see from this picture that I've drawn with some tailor's chalk onto the t-shirt, and I've drawn two triangles. These triangles will end up being the extra fabric I required to make the garment wider. Once I'd measured and drawn out the triangles, I cut them out from the t-shirt and I overlocked them right sides together with one side seam from the dress, and then I used my iron to press that seam that I'd just finished sewing. I laid the t-shirt panel that I'd already attached to the dress out flat with its right side up, and then I made sure to face right side to right side with the other side seam from the dress. I pinned this in place and then I overlocked that other side seam. Once I'd done it to one side, I then repeated the process with the other side of the dress. I then tried the dress back on to see if I'd added in enough fabric, and you can see me here trying on the dress for fit. You can see where I have added in the t-shirt fabric to the dress to create a side panel. I then needed to refinish the armholes. The armholes had previously been bound with bias binding, so I wanted to create the same look, and you can see what I was dealing with from the photo that I've got up on the screen now. So I unpicked the hem of the dress because I wanted to reuse some of that fabric that would eventually get cut off because I was making the dress shorter, to create binding that I could attach to the binding that was already around the armholes. To create the bias binding and ensure it was the same size, I measured the existing binding that was around the armholes and discovered it was 1 inch in width. I then cut the hem from the dress into the right size pieces for the bias binding and pressed it with my iron to create bias binding the same width as the existing bias binding already on the armholes. And then I just attached the new bias binding to the existing bias binding to cover the whole of the armhole. And here is a picture of me wearing the dress again to show you how the armhole has been finished. It was now time to cut the hem of the dress so that it could be created into a top. So to do this, I folded the front of the dress together so that the side seams matched, and the back of the dress together so that the side seams matched, and so that the extra panels that I'd added in also matched up so that it was ready for me to cut a new hem. I then got an existing top from my wardrobe that I'd already altered the hem on before. This was another thrifted top. I'd altered the hem using the hemline from the Crush on Me tee by Pattern Emporium. I decided to reuse this top to ensure that I was cutting a similar shape. I transferred the hem from the top onto the dress. I decided I wanted to recreate the deep hem that had been on the dress, and to do that I drew another line following the hem of the t-shirt 1.5 to 2 inches above the hemline I just traced. The finished hemline is going to be the line closer to the top of the dress, and the bottom hemline is going to be where I cut dress to create the new hemline. Then it was time to turn up the hem, so you can see a photo of me slowly pinning up the dress along the hemline. And once it was all pinned, I tried it on one more time to check that I was happy with the length of the top before I went about sewing it. I wanted the top to have a high-low hem, and you can see from this picture of me trying it on that I had created a high-low hem. I then pressed the pinned hemline because I wanted to take the pins out and fold under the hem so that it was neat on the inside of the top as well. And once I had a clearly pressed line, I then took all the pins out and turned under the hem and then pinned it up so that it was ready for me to sew. I gave the hem another good press, and then it was time to sew up the hem. And the bit of the dress that I'd cut away had been the hair instructions, so I wanted to keep that in. So I decided to unpick some of the neckline to insert the label, and once I had everything in place I restitched the binding and it secured the label, and that was how I refashioned my dress. Here's a picture of me wearing my new top. I'm going to get so much wear out of it now. I'm really happy that I made these changes. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, subscribe and leave me a comment. I hope you have a creative day, and I'll see you next time. Bye!